The unfortunate part about being an athlete is that injuries are part of the game. And here's the truth. There's hundreds of protocols physically on how to return from an injury. But what about mentally? What about that identity crisis of always being an injured player and having that lingering in the back of your head? Or maybe you're losing confidence when you get injured and not coming back the same way you were before. Listen, these are all real concerns of athletes. And in today's video, I'm gonna give you the 7-step protocol, the mental protocol that we use with all of our pro athletes on exactly how to return from your injury, not physically, but mentally. And it doesn't matter if you're injured for 5 days or 5 months or even potentially a year, and I'm guaranteeing it's gonna help you come back stronger, not just the same as before. So let's dive into it. My name's Matt Calderoni, co-founder of Molliteum, where we help athletes discover and reach their true potential by helping them build their resilience. And since 2015, we've helped just over 5,300 athletes, ranging from the youth to professional level in leagues like the NBA, NHL, NFL, and much more. Now, before I go any further in this video, please, to support this channel, like, subscribe, click the notification bell if you've ever gotten any value from us before. And please make sure to return on a weekly basis because we will have content coming out about different mental topics and how to build your resilience. Let's start with understanding the framework and blueprint on how to come back from an injury mentally as an athlete. There's 7 different steps that we follow that you can see here on my screen. Step number 1, we're gonna understand the injury. The second step is we're gonna commit to the reality of the process. Third, we're gonna redefine your identity. Then we're gonna set targets. We're gonna build certainty, reflect and reassess, and reload and have boundaries. Now, I wanted to say this before we go any further. It doesn't matter if you're injured for only 5 days, 5 months, or even a year. Doesn't matter the timeline. If you follow this framework that I've set out for you, I promise you'll get results. Now, we did also create a white paper on this that you can find on our site. I'm gonna link it somewhere here in this video and down below. Just download it. It's got the written version of this all. It's actually something we went through with one of our NFL players and rehabbed him from his injury. And it's something I promise if you follow it and use it in combo with this video, you'll get the same results. Now, starting with step 1, understanding the injury. I know this sounds basic, but let's talk straight for a second. When you first get injured, there's a lot of what ifs, right? Sometimes injuries aren't straightforward, and usually there's a bunch of different opinions that people are weighing in on to give their thoughts on what your injury could be. Sometimes this leads to a lack of clarity, and as a result of this lack of clarity, you don't really know where to start. You get overwhelmed. So, the first step whenever we are going through any kind of injury protocol and helping an athlete mentally return from that injury, the first thing we do is get extremely clear on what the injury is. I know this sounds simple, I know this sounds basic, but trust me on this one. If you haven't got clear on your injury yet, the first thing you need to do is go understand it. Understand what the diagnosis is, understand what the projected timeline is, and understand who you're going to need in your corner in order to make sure that you can come back in the best way possible. Some of the people we recommend to have in your corner is a physiotherapist that you trust, a strength coach you trust, a nutritionist that you trust, and of course, a mental coach that you trust in some way, shape, or form. The main reason for this is to help you remove that anxiousness or that uncertainty of not knowing what's gonna happen or what's coming next, because a lot of athletes do this that we deal with, and unfortunately, they try a bunch of different things instead of hitting that injury dead on for what it is. If you're going to do this and return with certainty and confidence from this injury and better than you were before, you need to get crystal clear on exactly what the injury is, what the diagnosis is, and what the prognosis is. Now, the second step is you have to commit to the reality of your process now. So you understand the injury, right? You got that diagnosis. If you haven't, make sure you get it. But then the next step is to see the injury for what it is, no better, no worse, right? That's committing to the reality of your process. Why do we do this? Well, oftentimes we see athletes who way overplay that injury, right? They get too drastic about things. They almost freak out when really they don't need to. You have to see things for what they are. And on the opposite side, we have a lot of athletes that downplay things. And as a result of that, sure, they might recover quickly. We'll put in, hyphens, but they recover quick in the moment, but long-term, then they're dealing with chronic issues. You need to commit to the reality of your process. And this is where the mental toughness part, the resilience part, starts kicking in. Because let's be honest for a second. There's a lot of times that we see athletes who go through this injury and they don't want to commit to that reality. They want to look at it and say, well, I'm going to speed this up. And as a result, they're fighting demons the entire way. They're not going through it with grace and they're actually prolonging their process. Then we have athletes who do commit to the reality of their process. They see things for what they are and they're able to handle it for what it is. This is literally the difference between going through your injury with grace or going through your injury with challenge. You want to go through it with grace so that things run smooth, so that you can adapt when things happen in front of you, because let's talk straight for a sec. There will be some times that things are going well and you're gonna have to adapt and push a week a little longer than you wanted to. That's okay. Just commit to the reality of your process. I'm asking you right here, right now, to make a commitment with me to understanding exactly what happens. You stick to it, you commit to it, and we go through it. Step 3, you need to redefine your identity. This is probably one of the most important parts to your recovery process, aside from understanding what the injury is and committing to it. But this is really where now the resilience part starts to shape itself, because a lot of times athletes will go through an injury as, I'm injured, there's not much I can do, and that's a story they're telling themselves, right? They take on this identity of almost being, inferior in some way. The reality is this: you can go through your injury as, oh, this is one of the toughest parts of my life, or you can see your injury and take on the identity as, I'm coming back bigger, better, stronger, faster. That's the truth. When we went through the injury with our NFL player, the biggest thing that we did, we made an identity shift right at the start, and it says it in the white paper, of going through that injury, not just as I'm going through an injury and having that identity, but I'm going through the injury as a legendary, iconic player who's gonna come back better than they were before. And truth be told, he did. Because the thing is this: we as human beings wanna act in accordance with who we believe we are. We have seen this time and time again when we get cases of athletes that are brought to us who really their process is not going that well. And the truth is that they end up having a longer recovery process than they need. We start doing some work on their identity or the story they're telling themselves, what they believe is happening around them, who they believe they are. And almost always we find that the story they're telling themselves is, I'm just an injured athlete and this is the reality of my process now. When really it's like, the other individuals that are going through it and come out way better than they were before have the mindset of, I know I'm injured, but I'm coming out as one of the best athletes ever. And there's even science to back this up. They've done studies on studies of people who are trying to quit smoking. Some of them have the identity as somebody who's quit smoking and going through the process of quitting smoking. They usually start smoking again within 7 to 10 days. Then they have another group of people that go through this quitting smoking process as becoming the fittest person in the world. And as a result of that, dropping smoking was one of the things they had to do. They find that these people stick to that commitment for years after. So the truth is, when it comes to this, you need to shift that identity right now. If you're going through it and you've had a hard time, I get it, but I need you to change that identity right now. I need you to change that story. We're no longer going through this injury as just someone who's injured. We are going through this injury right now as somebody who's coming back better than they were before. And if you have that identity, if you align with that identity and you start behaving that way, I promise you the results will follow. We as human beings want to act in accordance with who we believe we are. Start to become a person who's of power and identify as somebody as power. Because all you need to do now, once you've defined that identity, you just need to make sure that every thought or action aligns with this identity of coming back better than you were before. If it doesn't, simply change the way you're thinking or change the way you're acting. It's really that simple. Just start acting in accordance with somebody who's bigger, better, stronger than they were before the injury. Step 4, you need to set targets. When you're innovating yourself during an injury, one of the most important things you could do is start giving yourself some light timelines. Now, some people argue this and they say, well, it's not too good because I don't really know when my injury is going to be up. It's like, no, hold on. Let's go back to that understanding the injury part. Let's work backwards with your strength coach and with your physiotherapist and start to set some basic targets. Now, here's the truth. These targets can be anywhere from as long as a couple days, right up to a couple weeks, right up to a couple months. Doesn't matter. But you need to work with your strength coach and your physiotherapist to keep it very simple right now and ask yourself, what are we trying to accomplish right now in the next however many days? They should be able to help you with a timeline to say, hey, right now, player A, all we're focused on is making sure you can walk again. That's gonna be the next 4 weeks. Great. We have a target, 4 weeks, we're gonna work to try and walk. Or maybe your injury is a little more acute, meaning it's a little smaller. Your timeline might be that by the end of the week, we just need to get better mobility or flexibility within the knee joint. Great, that's awesome, we can do that. We have something to work towards now. But the point is this, without targets, you're just running in the wild. It's kind of like just running in the dark with a flashlight on and not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. You're just constantly running to the dark. Targets will give you a light, and most importantly, where athletes slip into depressions when they're injured is because they don't have any progress that they're trying to see. When you have targets, you are seeing progress. When you see progress, you're happy. That's how simple life is, right? So we need to find some progress within your injury, setting targets and making sure you do so consistently with your strength coach, with your physiotherapist, with your nutritionist, with your mental coach. You need to make sure that you're doing this consistently and on a regular basis and continuously redefining these targets. Step 5, you need to build your certainty. Once you have your target set and you're now on your way to the recovery process, you need to rebuild that certainty within yourself. So here's how we do it with an athlete recovering from an injury. If you're an athlete who's recovering from an injury and right now you're nowhere near anywhere, let's say return time with this current set of targets. So let's say you have a 3-month injury process, you're in month 1, we're not working on any field skills, let's say, you're just focused on gym work. I want you to apply this framework I'm about to give you just for the movements you're making in the gym. If you're an athlete who's about a month and a half away from returning to the field and actually getting back out there, this is where I suggest you start applying these skills both to the work you're doing in the gym and to the skills that you're going to use on the field. Now, to build your certainty, there's 3 things you need to really put into practice to make sure that you can do it. Number 1, it's mental reps. You need to visualize the technique, a challenge to overcome, and the outcome that you want when it comes down to the movement you're doing in the gym or the skills you're applying on the field. For example, we had an athlete going through an ACL recovery. When we were working with this individual, we had him in a stage in his rehab where he was focused simply on getting back into the gym and going deeper on his squat. So the technical part, we had him focusing. We worked with his physiotherapist and with his strength coach. We had him focused on specifically visualizing himself squatting as deep as they needed him to for that part of his process. The challenge we had him overcoming, we had him seeing squatting and getting through the hesitancy that he had to squat again with his right knee. And then the outcome we had him visualizing was him doing perfect squat technique in the gym. Do you see that build up there, right? So you want to go basic technique, then a challenge, then the actual outcome. Now, if you're an athlete who's within a month and a half or a month of recovering, this is where you can visualize your skills, right, that you're going to be using. So this might be that you start with, if you're a football player, let's say, and a wide receiver, and you need to catch the ball, and you need to do so in a route. You're going to start with visualizing yourself, just basically catching the ball in a basic way, just see somebody throwing the ball to you and have a great form to catch. Then you're going to visualize yourself getting through a challenge. Challenge might be that you need to visualize yourself catching the ball while on the run, and then the outcome is that you want to visualize yourself doing the actual route, making your slant, and catching the ball. It's that simple, okay? So use these to apply them in the right ways that you need to, and to make sure that you're actually getting the work done in order to feel confident there. The second thing is physical repetition. So once you have your mental reps, you need to physically go practice that. Now, if you're an athlete that's going through the rehab in the gym, that's going to be done in those gym sessions if that's all you're doing. If you're an athlete who's about a month away and you're able to return, I would highly suggest this. Do not go any further than trying to go a full-out run when you're recovering yourself or whatever it might be. I would suggest just doing the part that you're visualizing with the physical technique. I would just do that part. So if you're that wide receiver again, you can stand there and just have somebody throw you the ball and catch it. Just do that 20 minutes a day. It's simple, but that's going to build your confidence behind the skills that you're trying to apply, and it's going to be very simple so that you return better than you were before, and you don't wait to return to build that confidence back. Now, the final part is watching film, and watching film, it's very simple. You need to make sure that you're watching film of yourself actually playing the sport. Now, why do we do this? Because the research has shown us that when you watch film, you actually create neural associations, which attach your nervous system and your emotions together to make your body actually think you're going through those motions physically. The key to it is this though, you need to get emotionally invested into it. That's why I suggest watching one of your favorite players, seeing yourself, pretending you're on the field with them, whatever it is, but make sure that you're watching your role models, not just yourself. You can watch yourself for some of it, but I highly suggest following on the role model side to make sure that you're doing this the right way. Again, doesn't matter how many months away you are from your recovery, start this right away at the start. That way you're able to make sure that you start training yourself again in your nervous system to recover and return better than you were before. Step 6, you need to reflect and reassess. You need to be doing this on a weekly and monthly basis. Why? Because when you reflect and reassess, you can see your progress, right? You can say, oh my gosh, you know what? This past week I was in the gym, I was only going, a certain degree level with my squat. Now at the end of the week, I notice I can go a couple degrees lower. That's great. That's fantastic progress to see, but often what we do in the rehab process, we don't take enough time to notice our progress. We get sad, and we don't recover and return better than we were before. Now on a monthly basis, if you're doing this is where you're gonna be able to really look at it and say, okay, now I can reset my targets. This is what I did last month, I accomplished it, I need to move forwards. Or this is where you'll find some adaptations that come up, right? And you'll look at it and say, okay, you know what? This is what I was after this past month. I was trying to walk. I probably need about another week, a week and a half. Speak with your physio about it, speak with the strength coach, boom, you do it and you go get it. But this is how we see progress. Reflection and reassessment is one of the most important. I highly suggest you get a journal, put a date at the end of each week, write about how well you did during the week, what improvements you saw, what you want to push for next week, and go from there. It's that easy, but this is one of the most important parts of this process that we find with our athletes that they actually find very therapeutic as well. You want to see that you're recovering. You want to see that you're progressing and moving forwards. And finally, step 7, when going through the rehab process, you need to have boundaries and a reload time. What does that mean? Often athletes, when they're injured, they obsess over their sport 24/7, 365. We don't need you doing that. Listen, you need to understand exactly what your boundaries are for recovery. What does that mean? If your physiotherapist and your strength coach only requires you to do a 1-hour training session in the gym that day, that's all you need to do. I find a lot of times that when we're dealing with athletes who are recovering from injuries, I get that the ESPN, TSN, whatever stories are sexy to hear about, how, athlete A and B push themselves really hard and they were, having to be held back they were doing so much work. I get that it's a sexy story, but the truth of the matter is, it doesn't do you any good. In fact, it makes you overthink things. It makes you get burned out, and that's not what we're trying to do here. So have clear boundaries. If you only need to work for an hour a day, plus do your mental reps after like we spoke about, and your film, okay, that's an hour and let's say about 20, 30 minutes a day. Once you're done, you're done. That's it. You can look into the other things. You need to make sure during this process, what's very crucial, and we speak about this a lot, you're doing what we call reloading. Reloading is the process of stepping back, pushing your sport forward, and making sure to go do other things in your life. During the injury process and the rehab process, one of the things that make our athletes most successful is that we actually have them doing things outside of their sport a lot more. Seeing friends that they didn't have the time to see. Making sure that, they're taking care of their nutrition. They're getting their routines and habits down, like their bedtimes again. They're reestablishing those. During this process, I'm telling you, one of the easiest things to do is to lose those boundaries. You start waking up at random times. You start going to bed at random times. You start eating random things. Don't do that. Make sure you have a specific bedtime, a specific wake up time, and abide by those. But once you're done your rehab process, the work you need to do, you make sure you go do other things in your life. Read a book that you've always wanted to read. Go see some friends that you've always wanted to see. Just make sure you get to bed on time, you wake up on time, and your nutrition's in check. And there it is, the 7 steps that we take with our athletes to mentally recover from an injury and to come back stronger than they were before. So, if you like this video, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell. And if you are going through an injury, comment down below. We want to hear about it. We want to help you through it. This is a community here of difference makers at Molliteum, and we really appreciate you going through it. So again, we have a white paper that we've written about this. All you need to do is click the link that's in this video right now or the one down below. You can get access to that white paper, see how we went through it, but just follow this process. I promise it works, and I'm guaranteeing you're gonna get results. Until next time, stay resilient. So if you like this clip and you wanna watch another one, click right here. And if you wanna watch a full podcast episode, click right here.